phase in each lower body session as well too, because you'll find like a nice flow of things, like, you know, it's stance training. And this session we have the wide stance. So that's what we're going to start with, is just an overview of how to do that, how to train it.
I won't lie, some of the times you put me through an exercise and I'm grinding, like, it's like, for me, of course, like, hard work is just like something that doesn't come natural.
Yeah.
But when I get out of it though, it feels nice.
It does feel good. And again, it's just like getting better technique on a squat. Like, as you get better at it, you get more confident with it, you apply yourself more, you start to work harder, you know what I mean? Like, it's those kind of things play a huge role in like flexibility development. Like, as much as it's like I feel like shit in this position, as you get more confident with the technical execution of it, you try harder, you know what I mean? Like, it gets better that way too.
Sure.
So the wide stance is the horse stance, and it actually comes from the martial arts world, but it's trained a little bit differently in terms of like developing flexibility and strength. And this is all going to come down to like hip positioning, how you're going to use the hips or move a little bit, like it changes. So we'll review that first. But setting up for horse stance will be pretty specific each time. And the reason being for that is it'll also become a measurement of improvements in your flexibility. So we'll start with a 3-step stance. So 3-step stance, like even the videos when I send them to you, they'll break this down. Starts with feet together, and it's a heel-toe movement. So from this position, I press my heels out first, and then my toes. So that's 2 steps. And then my heels again. So that's 3. But from the 3rd step, I make an adjustment to have my feet slightly turned out, kind of like a sumo squat. The horse stance, in terms of training it for development of your flexibility in a wide stance, it's going to be done with an anterior pelvic tilt. So now that I'm wide enough that I can move my hips down into position, I want to do that with the pelvis tilting. The pelvis tilts forward, but it arches the back. So the hips draw in. And as I tilt back, I'm thinking about creating that position. So let's start by finding a 3-step stance.
Okay. Could you show me one
Yep.
more time? So here.
Yep, so it's going to be heels first. That's 1. Toes is 2. And then heels again. And you can see that I even internally rotate there to get some wider space. That's 3. And then I can adjust my feet and come down. Hands on the hip is good, because as you squat down, you'll feel like you can find an anterior pelvic tilt. And even for you, you can adjust your feet out a little bit more. It will just like turn them out, so it'll allow you to have a little more external rotation. And the idea is that you feel like you can open the knees up as you go down, and maintaining that arch in the back. So what do you feel in this position? Good. That's what we want to be feeling. And we're going to train that position. And to start, I'll teach you contractions. And to be honest, like when it comes to static stretching, like as boring as it is, this is a great example of introducing you to contractions and a stretch, because we're already in an isometric position. So it's a lot easier to facilitate that kind of contraction that you want to think about in a stretch. Like the 90-90 we did, it's so passive in a way, it's hard for you to feel like you're getting good contractions in it. Whereas horse stance, because we're grounded and squatting down, the isometric intention's already there. And the contractions we're going to run through here, if you're feeling good and ready, is on the outside of the knee and on the inside. So when I say go, we're going to be pressing against the hands. So you actually want to be pressing the knees as if you're trying to create a contraction to force the glutes to shorten and work harder. And that's for about a 5-second count. And then you're going to reset. So not necessarily relax, but just reset the pelvis position. So the arch is back, and now we go to the inside. So same thing, we're going to press in. If we're trying to close the legs, really resist that with the hands. Then reset the pelvis. And you may feel like as you reset the pelvis, you can almost feel like it sits down a little bit more. And that would be an example of contractions in the stretch.
Yeah, it might get intensifies the stretch for sure.
Yeah, gets you working in the areas that we need you to work in. Gets you under, like, that is called reciprocal inhibition And what that does is when you work on those contractions, it helps the lengthened tissue, the adductors, actually open up and relax a little bit more. So instead of just like holding a weight, which we're going to get into, you're actually creating these contractions and sensations that actually allow the stretched tissue to relax so you can get into a stronger position.
The only question I have is when I'm down, you don't want me like this though. It's cool.
Well, these are some things we can talk about. Feet a little bit more forward, just a little bit more forward. So we don't want them turned out too much. We want to feel like we still have some integrity of the foot. So changing range of motion is changing this shape.
Yeah.
And just like you can come out of it here so I can show you, is like a horse stance. And this is where it's different than like just a sumo squat, is like the things that we're looking for is that the hip in the position it's in with the knees adducted can actually extend forward. So it actually becomes almost like a knees over the toe type position. That is a demonstration of improvement in your hip abduction and your adductor strength. So you become more stacked and moving down to like a parallel position. These are kind of like the measurements of success, like where yesterday I took pictures of your long lunge.
Yeah.
I'm going to take pictures now of your horse stance, and this is the stuff that we're looking for seeing improvements in, which are things that can be coached, not forced.
Yeah.
So for now, if you think about making an adjustment to make a position more comfortable for someone, the hinge forward actually creates a stronger hip position for someone that's more stiff. So if my torso moves forward, it puts less stress on that vertical placement, and it makes it easier for me to actually anterior tilt my pelvis. So this is actually a good starting point for beginners when they start horse training, is slightly tilted forward, just enough that you feel like you can create a stronger hip position, because now you know it's more about that arch and the knees coming out. Whereas if you try to go vertical too soon right now, you'll feel like the knees cave in, that kind of thing. So this is a bottom loaded horse stance. And what's nice about loading from the bottom with the horse stance is the weight actually serves in assisting you in extension. So as much as we may still be in that slightly hinged position, you'll also probably feel that with weight, you're actually able to find a better extension of the hip because the weight's now assisting you with that. So that's actually how we set that up, as we get into our 3-step stance. And when we pick the weight up, we try to find a more vertical position with assistance of the weight. Now we'll just start with a hold so you can feel like you're getting that assistance. And then we'll get into some of the ways it will be prescribed, which is emphasizing that end range position. So we'll probably start with this one, should be fine. And you'll want to be standing right over it, so it's almost like you're keeping that more vertical pattern. And as you get more comfortable with horse stance, know that each step can be as extreme
as you want me to hold it like this,
as you want it to be. Yep. And think about pulling yourself up and finding room to perform a stronger abduction at the hip. Now, what we want to think about doing here, see what we can do, is if you can pulse this end range, almost as if you're just going to very slowly create this. It's called a quasi-isometric. You can come up a bit higher. See, I mean, yeah, you can see how this might become a more intense session, like as we start to progress it more.
Will be a little higher,
yeah, and it just starts putting you in this like deep adductor position.
Yeah, like I can feel this working. Like you saw my legs shaking.
Yeah. So the pulsing is a quasi-isometric technique, and that quasi-isometric, when we think about pulsing versus the technique of the quasi-isometric, it's going to be more so that it's not like this, where it would be more of a very intentional pushing my hips down and then coming back up. When the hips go, like when the weight forces down, the idea to challenge yourself here with is that the knees are pushing more. They can come in a little bit when you come up, but then we're pushing them back out when we go down. And the thing about the anterior tilt is that when you start using the weight and get into these positions, it comes more naturally, which is nice. We don't have to do it again yet because we'll now do the complementary movements to the horse stance. So the horse stance is kind of like the main of this session, like the long stance was of the other. But to complement this, we're now thinking about, like as we do in any stretch, everything that's being really aggressively shortened, it's where we want to complement lengthening and opening that up. So this is a cross leg side bend, and it opens the hip capsule up, gives it a chance for the glutes to stretch. What's also nice about it is it actually provides some length to your TFL muscle. So the tensor fascia lata, it's a hard muscle to actually load and lengthen. So it complements and kind of brings that into the equation a bit better. So how you do this, you can see I'm cross-legged here, and my front leg actually lunges. So to find the stretch here where I want it, that's the first step. So even just that in itself, if I push my knee forward, I'll feel the side of the hip start to stretch. Now from there, it's a side bend. So I keep reaching that knee forward, get this opened up, and push back up. You can think about it being an eccentric controlled movement to find the stretch.
Okay.
And we push back up.
So that's this leg over this. It's
Yep.
going to be
And
this,
we can bring,
this way, right?
yeah, we're trying to get the stretch on this side.
Okay.
That's in the back. You can bring the stance even
A little wider.
little more forward, staggered. So I can bring, yeah, so it's not like, it's more staggered that way. And the more you lunge forward with this knee towards my fist.
Keep your stretch.
Yep. You feel the stretch on the capsule here.
Yeah.
So keep pushing into the knee here, and then you come back up when you feel like you've had a good stretch. So you are getting lateral flexion of the obliques, but we're really trying to focus on getting length here. Push that knee forward.
And that back leg stays straight, right?
Yep, as best you can. You even feel like you probably get some IT band kind of action going here as well too.
It's right through here.
Yeah, good.
It feels nice too.
That's like, honestly, one of the hardest areas to get that stretch in. Straight leg piriformis. So everyone does piriformis like that, right? The pigeon stretch. But your piriformis is an interesting muscle because it works in external and internal rotation. So it actually lengthens with a straight leg too. But no one ever just does that movement because it's hard to find one that actually addresses it, and this one hits that really well. So this is the big cue here, is that the knee comes forward. So bring lunge, think about lunging this knee, there you go, and then you get the stretch here. One side will probably feel more jacked up than the other two, which is normal.
Yeah, so this side feels easier, like it's less of an intense stretch.
Yeah.
So I thought first I was doing it wrong, but then you said that, I was like, okay.
Yeah, one side probably feel more jacked up. And the thing there to cue is cue that lunge more than anything, more than your side bend, and you'll get that stretch here.
How's it going? Good morning.